This is CBC Windsor News. I'm Chris Hensing. Katarina is away. These are our top stories. Big city mayors want Ontario to allow forced treatment for extreme cases of mental health and addictions, and Windsor says it's ready to be a pilot case. We have the province's finance minister live on the program asking about those $200 checks everyone will get and calls for better income supports from people who are in poverty. And one of the most controversial questions this time of year, how old is too old for trick-or-treating? The Ontario government has released its fall economic statement, possibly its last one before an election call. The budget shows the province has fallen even further behind in building new homes and will continue to run a deficit as it plans to send out $200 checks to all taxpayers and their children. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has the details.
The Premier and Finance Minister headed in to release their mini budget. It all had the feel of an election campaign.
Tell me, is that good or bad? Bad.
The minister repeatedly comparing previous government policies to what's happening now under Doug Ford and the PCs.
How about that? Is that good or bad?
He didn't ask them about housing starts. They're not even close to the province's target, down from the spring budget projection, with around 81,000 new homes expected to be built this year. The government's goal was 125,000. Even that was after it changed the definition to include long-term care beds and student housing.
People in Ontario are tired of gimmicks. They want to know, where are the homes? Where are the homes we were promised? Because we can't find any.
High interest rates have had their impact, and that's cyclical, but we're not going to relent.
It means the province is even further away from its goal of building 1.5 million homes by 2031. The finance minister did highlight the payouts coming for 15 million Ontarians, $200 for every taxpayer and their children.
A family of five will receive $1,000.
It'll cost the province $3 billion. The numbers can be dizzying. Those $200 checks will go out as the province faces a $6.6 billion deficit this year. It's an improvement from the projection in the spring budget. At that time, the deficit was expected to be $9.8 billion. The biggest reason for the improved financial outlook? Higher sales tax revenue.
Ontario's finances are in better shape today than they ever have been in decades.
For next year, they're expected to improve again. The deficit projected to be $1.5 billion, the same amount in the contingency fund. So could it mean a balanced budget next spring?
Well, look, I'm an optimist. I'm always hoping that I can beat the numbers.
We know very well they're going to announce a balanced budget when they have money, $1 billion set aside in a contingency reserve.
Leading to more speculations of a potential early election. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
And joining us now live is Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy. Thanks for joining us here, Minister.
My pleasure, Chris.
I want to start with this $200 check. We've heard some people ask, why not throw an income limit on that? Millionaires are going to end up getting the same checks that minimum wage earners will receive. Did you try and target that any differently? Were any discussions about that?
Yeah, look, taxpayers have, worked hard to earn that money, and this is going to impact many households who are feeling the pinch. The cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of housing has impacted many, many Ontarians. So this is our way to, when those revenues have gone up, we're fiscally very sound to give money back now, timely relief for families rather than down the road.
You mentioned housing right there. That's something that comes up a lot here in Windsor. Windsor's manager of homelessness and housing supports say funding's really stretched thin, that more people relying on the city for help than before. She says an increase to Ontario Works would help. Are there any plans for an adjustment to those types of support programs here in the province?
Look, we're helping the most vulnerable in this province. We increased the homelessness prevention program by 40% one time. That's $1 billion over 5 years. We're definitely increased the disability program payments, indexed it for the first time to inflation. It's up over 17% since we took power. And we're also helping low-income seniors, indexing their payments to inflation. No other government has done that. So we're providing supports for the most vulnerable, and at the same time we're building shelters, working with municipalities, solving the homelessness crisis together.
I was speaking to someone on ODSP just about an hour ago, and they congratulated you on tying it to inflation. They said that that was a great move, but they say it's not enough to help cover the cost of housing. They think that if you doubled that, it would mean less people in tents, more people in safe housing. When do you think we might get to that type of position, or is that something that you're considering?
Well, you know, I appreciate the comments from the individual. Let's remember the previous government, the Liberals and the NDP, they had a chance to index it to inflation. They didn't. Then we increased it one time by 5%. Actually, we went further. We increased the earnings exemption so people who can and are willing to work on ODSP, that they'll be able to put more money back in their pockets. I increased the earnings exemption from $200 to $1,000 a month so that they could keep more of their hard-earned dollars. So there's always more to do, but you know, we've made more progress than the NDP or the Liberals ever did.
And I know we've got a short time here, so I guess final question here, Minister. The changes in the interest rates, some expected that to help housing starts. Doesn't seem like it's made that big of a shift yet. Do you see changes happening?
Well, it's always there's always a lag for sure. It's a good question. You know, interest rates are coming down. That will help. But you know what? This is a blip. You know, that's happened when interest rates go up. Housing starts always slow down. Last year, we hit our targets 2 years ago. It was a record amount of housing starts since the late 1980s and early 1990s. We're not going to relent building the homes, the student housing, the long-term care housing, apartments, front door, back door, you know, and we're working with the municipalities. We're putting billions of dollars into infrastructure so that more homes can be built, and we won't rest until the job is done.
All right. Thank you very much for taking the time on a busy day.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
That's Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy live tonight. How do you help people facing the most extreme cases of addiction and mental health issues? Some mayors across Ontario, including here in Windsor, have been talking about the need for a program that would force them to get care. CBC's Jennifer Lagrassa breaks down what this could look like and whether it works.
If the province launches mandatory treatment programs for people with mental health and addictions issues, Windsor wants to try it out.
There's a general sense that we're failing when it comes to addressing the substance crisis. There's a hunger to do something different.
But is forcing people to get treatment the answer?
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force the horse to drink, right? So it's like, how do we forget that lesson?
Two Toronto experts I spoke with say that there isn't really strong evidence that shows involuntary care actually works. The idea also raises a lot of questions about human rights. To be clear, right now, there's no proposed pilot program on the table, but some mayors across Ontario are pushing for the province to consider one. And a version of involuntary care already exists in Ontario. A doctor can suspend a person's rights for 72 hours or longer if they're a danger to themselves or others.
I think what proponents are talking about here is something radically different, a very large expansion of the abilities of doctors to hold on to patients well beyond 72 hours or a week or two, with the idea of doing some sort of substance-related care.
The details of that care, where a person would go and for how long, are still not clear. But even without those specifics, concerns are being raised. First off, experts point to the many people who want treatment right now but can't access it. There's lengthy wait lists for programming for the people who are ready. Experts say we need to be filling those gaps. Also, getting people to stay sober is about so much more than just keeping them away from their substance.
As a society, we can start to address some of the actual issues that are putting people in these situations, like unaffordable housing, difficulty finding work, and, unaffordable food, unaffordable, basic needs, then we're going to keep facing these kinds of problems.
So instead of involuntary care, the experts I spoke with suggested that we expand treatment methods that do work and also boost social supports that will help people stay in recovery. Jennifer Lagrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Tonight is the night before Halloween, and it used to be a night people in Windsor and Detroit dreaded. It's Devil's Night, a night where fires were set in both cities. But nowadays, October 30th, just another evening. Dale Molnar has more on what drove out the devil.
That's a Windsor Fire Service truck going out on a call on October 30th, 1985. Devil's Night was a lot busier back then. Police and fire had to put on extra staff. Mike Costi is the current fire prevention officer. He says maybe some years of bad weather has helped, but he says now October 30th is just another day.
I think education. I think more kids are aware. I think the police presence is out there. I think it's lost its luster.
At its worst, 4 years ago, 800 fires were set in downtown Detroit.
That's a CBC report from 1988 when Detroit was still experiencing problems on Devil's Night. It all started in 1984 after the Detroit Tigers won the World Series, but the city brought in a curfew and increased police presence. Then in 1997 they launched a neighborhood watch campaign and anti-arson campaign, renaming it Angels Night. In 2017, they dropped that campaign altogether because it was no longer a problem. Now, on Halloween night, the city celebrates Halloween in the D at fire halls, rec centers, and police stations. Tony Stovall runs the program.
We basically light up the city with a ton of activities that families and kids at heart can enjoy.
Stovall says Halloween in the D is a celebration of what's positive about Detroit.
Our neighborhoods are safe, and our communities are safe, and this is a way that we can again promote that. So, because it's a team effort that comes together to put this all on. So every department is involved in making this a fun and safe activity.
Now, Costi says the only thing to worry about is watching out for the kids on Halloween night.
I think we should be more concerned about the young kids running around and slow down and watch little ones running back and forth between the houses. Be more aware of those things.
Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Staying with Halloween here, you might say it's a paranormal predicament. How old is too old for trick-or-treating? CBC's Katerina Georgieva took to Windsor's spooky streets to find out where people think that cutoff is.
It is Halloween season, and we want to know, how old is too old to go trick-or-treating? Let's find out.
I feel like if you're still a teenager, I think you should have fun while you can.
It's fun, and you get free candy, so I don't see the harm in still going out even when you're older.
I think like around 16, 17, it's like,
Probably like 17-ish.
How old is too old to go trick-or-treating?
Honestly, never. Like, I hate the concept of having to add things when you're a certain age. Because like, if you enjoy it, if you like having candy, if you like dressing up, then do it. Personally, I've never gone trick-or-treating before. This is actually gonna be my first year, and I'm really excited.
You're never too old to go trick-or-treating, never too old to get free candy.
I would say once they're like 14, 15, when they're a little bit taller, a little bit have a mind of their own.
There is no age for celebration, like technically for having fun.
If I see older kids and they're dressed up, I'd rather they come trick-or-treating than causing, problems everywhere.
Young teenagers, it's fine. But I think a lot of kids like to go and push it as far as they can to get the candy, so.
What would you say to somebody who opens up their door and sees teenagers standing there and might feel a little bit grumpy about it and say, oh, they're probably a little bit too old to be here? What's your message to them?
Trick or treat, smell my feet, give me something good to eat.
I love that idea of never being too old. If Yukon Cornelius knocks on your door tomorrow, just give him a nice little candy there, eh? A post about a Windsor mainstay going viral on X, formerly known as Twitter, over the last couple of days. But we gotta correct this, sort of. So here is a picture of some recognizable local pizza posted by a user named Oxford Wolf on Monday. Now, as of this afternoon, it's garnered more than 8 million views. The user, who says they live in Windsor, points out that shredded pepperoni is the way pizza is made in the province of Ontario. In the comments, you can see quickly corrected, as other users pointed out, that this phenomenon belongs solely to Windsor. It looks like they learned something new about this beautiful city that we live in. We take a live look outside as we enjoy some of the beauty. We have Colette coming in later. We hope that forecast for tomorrow is something beautiful because those door knockers don't want to be doing it in the rain. We'll find that out later in the show. We turn now to the United States. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris crisscrossing several swing states today. They're trying to drum up support ahead of next Tuesday's presidential election. But this morning, Harris trying to distance herself from remarks that President Joe Biden made last night about a racist joke made at a Trump rally on Sunday night.
Just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. And as President of the United States, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you vote for me or not.
Biden went to X to clarify, saying that he was only trying to make the joke that was unconscionable. Now, Harris's running mate Tim Walz also trying to tamp down the backlash on morning TV, saying that Biden was referencing distasteful rhetoric, not Trump supporters. But the controversy is overshadowing Harris's huge rally last night in Washington. That's where she delivered her closing arguments in front of a crowd of at least 60,000 people. Now, of course, there are stark differences on policy between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, including when it comes to energy, clean energy in particular. But even in Texas, going green is a growing business that some companies, they don't want to turn back from. CBC News international climate correspondent Susan Orson has that story from Fort Worth.
In an election where Donald Trump is promising to drill, baby, drill, Texas, the beating heart of oil and gas, is surprisingly galloping along with renewable energy, not just building out wind and solar, but storing it in massive battery energy storage facilities like this one near Fort Worth, Texas.
We have just had massive numbers of batteries coming online in Texas. And that level of growth is, I think, projected to continue for at least a few more years.
So these batteries take electricity from the grid when demand is low and store it here. And then when demand spikes, like with heat waves or cold snaps, they can push the stored electricity back into the grid, making it more stable. Some of the energy stored in here comes from gas-powered generation, but some of it is from wind and solar, laying waste to the idea that you can't rely on renewable energy when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing.
Oil and gas and wind aren't one or the other. So, we're continuing to develop the wind projects, and we're seeing the demand from the customers for that wind, solar, and energy storage.
The International Energy Agency says battery storage is a key piece of the transition to clean energy. And here in Texas, it's a hot business, but this is Texas. And oil and gas lobbyists are trying to pressure state government to continue to subsidize building out fossil fuel industries and perhaps put up legislative roadblocks to growing businesses like battery storage.
I think overall, they're not against it. That doesn't mean there aren't individual companies or individual interests who are fighting the development of renewable energy.
The U.S. is far ahead of Canada on battery storage, with Texas and California leading the country. It crosses political lines, but with the U.S. election just days away, there is concern there may be a reset on renewable energies if Donald Trump goes back to the White House and takes aim at clean energy policy. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Fort Worth, Texas.
The ripple effects of that election. Coming up, we will have Colette Kennedy giving us the full forecast, including that ultra important Halloween look. That's next. Now, thanks to Hollywood, we know snakes on a plane doesn't really end well, but how about alpacas on a train? That's Pacey and Dawson, two alpacas, the goodwill ambassadors for this year's Royal Agricultural Winter Fair in Toronto. This morning's ride downtown to Union Station to celebrate the fair's return. You can see right there that reaction of surprised passengers. These fluffy pair welcome with open arms on that commute. I'm sure that they're available anytime. Just adorable. It's always that little fuzziness, right? It looks like a nice little sweater, but you know, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying I'd give it a nice little hug there.
Yes, you don't see that every day. I wish we did see that every day, but you don't see. And snakes on a plane, it doesn't end well. I see you spoiled. I haven't seen that.
We should have. I very much apologize. I think that movie came out like 20 years ago, but Colette,
I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, you'll never know who Darth Vader is either. I won't get that one for you either.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead, Ben, and we'll get to, this isn't a spoiler alert, I'm sure. You probably know just how warm it was today, but did you know it was a new record? Yes, so today's high, 24.2, wonderful degrees. The old record, 23.9, so that was from 1946. And you know, tomorrow the record is the same, 23.9, and we may make it. We could be just a little bit shy, but that's where we landed after a very mild morning at just over 16 degrees, basically 17 this morning. And just looking at some of the current temperatures, just because I want to show you the contrast here of what's going on in northern Ontario. Much cooler air is sinking in there around the region. 20 in London, 19 for Chatham-Kent, 21 for Sarnia right now. We know the winds were part of the story, right? Those winds driving in here, gusty from the southwest. It's going to be breezy again tomorrow and even through the overnight hours. So just know some windy conditions for Halloween for our little folks heading out and parents that will be accompanying them. And in terms of the wet weather, I'm getting to that in just a second, but just showing you some of the cloud cover that we've been dealing with as well. And when you get a contrast with that cooler air and this warmer air, even a little bit humid out ahead of it, we've got this line. In fact, severe weather potential there down through the Midwest, this whole area in yellow. That's actually a tornado watch that's in play there. And then in northern Ontario, where you see, this is a rainfall warning, where you see the blue, that's a weather statement for 5 to 10 centimeters of snowfall. That's possible as those temperatures cool down. All right, so let's watch the cold front. That's what's going to come in and change the weather that we're experiencing, and we won't have the mild conditions anymore. So another day of it tomorrow, a little bit of sun early, or at least a veil of cloud, but some sun coming through. But then very, very quickly, the clouds will thicken up. And then here's your timeline. So it looks like, you know, it seems like the timing could be good to get these showers through from about 3 till, 6:30, maybe 7 through the Windsor area, and then drying out. So give it a chance or go out with the umbrella and just be prepared for it. But I think we could get into some decent trick-or-treating hours there. And then after that, we have kind of a mix of sun and cloud as we go forward in time and getting there into Friday. So overnight tonight, 16 degrees. I'm putting us at 23, which would be just shy of a new record. Let's see what happens there. Those winds gusting to up to 60 kilometers an hour. And then it's back to reality as the temperatures drop back closer to seasonal, although they'll spike again on Tuesday. So just off my screen here, we get to Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll see them jump up a bit. And another reminder about Saturday, putting those clocks on back, Chris.
I gotta say the same thing Kat said last night. This reminder has been super helpful for me, Colette, because you know you lose track of everything, especially when you're trying to figure out what you're doing for Halloween. I gotta ask, you got a favorite costume? People might be thinking about what they need to do for tomorrow. What's the best one you put on there?
My sister made me a pink elephant costume that I was able to wear because the way she made it, multiple years. It grew with me, so that's got to be it. What about you?
Oh, I love that. I go to the dollar store, figure out what's there, and they always stock the Christmas shelves up just before, so I've gone as a Christmas tree, a stocking. Santa might be in the future there.
I can see that. For some reason, can see you with that.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep it in. I'm working on the belly, but the beard's already there. That's it for us there, Colette. Thanks so much for everybody for watching. If you news anytime, go to cbc.ca/wins.